Yo, what's up guys, it's your boy Sami here. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto is reincarnated as a god in RWBY world, part 1. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please subscribe to our channel, and like this video. I do not own this fanfic, and also make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, Purriah, and support him for writing this awesome fanfic. Link is in the description. So let's get into the video. Limbo. Not much is known about the word, what it means, and what it refers to. There have been many references, definitions, and perceptions of the word, and what it entailed. It is believed by some that it is the abode of souls, where those who have reached the end of their time come to rest. Others believe that it is a space that is void of all things, where souls gather to await judgment for an unknown time. It was a truth that always escaped humanity because it was beyond their time. Only in death would this knowledge truly reveal itself, and that is where we find ourselves now. Spanning the darkness of empty space were countless orbs of souls, with each shining in varying hues of colors and lights. The number seemed infinite and overwhelming, and some shine brighter than others, but all were fated to diminish at some point. By no means do these souls disappear, they go through a process of reincarnation. When the light of these souls have diminished, it means that they have been purified of their previous life. This means the memories, experiences, and all things that came with their previous life are reset to a moldable base state. From there, they will enter a new beginning, until it is their time to once again return to the space where all souls reside. The light represents the will and resistance of the souls against the process of reincarnation. The brighter they are, the stronger they can resist the effects of purification, but the end is always inevitable. That was until now. Across the sea of souls, there were few that could stand above the rest, and be so pronounced in presence. But there was one soul that shone a bright hue of orange, that seemed to illuminate the darkness of its immediate surroundings. It was bright like the sun, and firm like a diamond. Its will seemed almost unshakable. Where is this? What happened? The sun-like soul had thought to itself, I think I died, but how? The bright soul seemed confused and lost. It wasn't aware that the degradation of its memories and previous life had already begun the process of cleansing. As it tried to recollect the lost memories, it could feel a sharp pain from resistance through its pointless effort. Shit, why can't I remember? It thought in slight anger and annoyance. I was in a war. There was a large beast with a single eye, that's right. The RWBY. But what happened afterwards? Since the process had only begun, it was still able to recall what may have led to his death, as well as its life up until that point. He began by attempting to remember those he knew, and his own name. I can still remember my name, Naruto Uzumaki. I was fighting with Sakura, Sasuke, Kakashi, my dad, and many other shinobi, so maybe I'm suffering from short-term memory loss. As a soul, the now named light that was Naruto Uzumaki was unable to see, but it was able to sense and feel for things. What happened to my body? Where is everyone? Naruto began to panic. Not many souls were blessed with the awareness he had. It was both a blessing and a curse. A blessing too, that you can recall the times you had in your life before heading to a new one. It was a curse because you were forced to be aware that your memories are slowly dying as time progressed until the moment it completely vanished. And thus began the inner turmoil and suffering of Naruto Uzumaki as he slowly began to forget himself and all those he once held dear. How much time had passed since Naruto became aware? Days, weeks, months. In a plane where there seems to be nothing but endless souls, there was no way of telling time properly, but he knew that he didn't have long. It didn't take long for him to become aware that he was slowly losing his memories, and that fact scared him. He tried with all his will to resist, and though he was able to prolong his fate, there was a cost. If he had let his memories die passively, it would have been done in reverse order from the time he died, down until his first breath of life. Because he was aggressive in overturning fate, however, his memories became fragmented in what was lost, and what remained. He knew he had forgotten some important people already. He could recall he was on a team with people, but the names were lost to him. He knew there was a woman who was the leader of his village that he grew close to, and funnily, but pathetically enough, he could only recall her giant breasts. He knew there was an old man with white, long hair who had a tendency for peeping on women, but he couldn't remember his name. He knew this was important to him, and held some significance in his life, because the hurt was much greater when he forgot this man. The price of fighting against fate were the memories of people he had once fought to protect. This thought had brought him despair, but he refused to give in to fate. He was never one to follow the rules set before him. He was born to bend them, and mark his own path in life. I will not succumb to this. I will not let the time I spent, the lessons I learned, and the life I lived die like this. I am Naruto Uzumaki. It was this thought that sent a surge of power and light in the distance, once more shedding light into the abyss of emptiness. As Naruto continued his battle, he did not realize he managed to catch the attention of a primordial being that was far above any god that had been mentioned within the folds of time and space, and further beyond that. It was a being that carried no bias, no emotion, and no thought. The being was the law of the universe given form. This being was the network that connected all planes of existences and parallel universes. This being was the god of what all things were, are, and will be. Peace, love, and war. Past, present, and future. Creation, evolution, and destruction. Everything that existed was within its domain. And with Naruto's outburst, the chord was struck. It felt the will of Naruto to synchronize with the creator of one particular universe. With such a powerful attraction, it decided to harmonize the two beings by bringing them together. Naruto began to feel his soul begin to disappear, greatly shocking him. What the hell? I thought I still had time. What's going in? But a moment, and before he could finish that last thought, a flash of white engulfed the once dark abyss. As the light dissipated, the presence of Naruto was no longer in sight. I wish I could have done more. Deep within the stretches of space, floating amongst the large array of stars, was a lone figure that was an ethereal white in appearance. Surrounding was a deep glow, with no features that could be seen besides the shape of his figure. Not far from him was a shattered moon with fragments that seemed to stray outwardly, seemingly to escape the source. Beneath the damaged moon was a world of his creation remnant. This figure was the god, so to speak, of this dimension. It was a world of his own design, one he created with great hopes and dreams. Unfortunately, circumstances had led from one thing to another, and not everything was as happy as he had planned. There was so much more he wanted to do with this dimension, so much more he still wants to do, but he did not possess the means. So now, he can only watch, as time passes the world by, and hope that things will turn out for the better. But lately, he has turned to wishing for a change, a miracle of sorts to change the way the world was set. I wonder if there's a way. But before this god could finish that thought, a flash of white engulfed his vision, temporarily blinding him. When the light dimmed, and his vision returned once more, he opened his eyes to find the source of the light. He did not need to look far because before him was a small orange orb of light. This drew a curious look from the god, as he began to question its existence. This thing must be a soul. What is it doing so far out of limbo? As he examined the orb closer, a hint of shock could be heard from his tone of voice. This soul hasn't been purified completely. How did it even get here? As the god continued to mull over these thoughts, the orange soul began to regain its bearings, as it took in its surroundings. What happened, and where is this? Hearing the thoughts of the soul, the god once more became astonished, as he looked on. Does soul even communicate? There is definitely something strange about this one. No longer willing to hold back their curiosity, the god finally spoke. Ah. Welcome to my domain, lost soul. Finally being aware of another presence, Naruto focused on the ethereal figure in surprise, and asked, What? Who are you? The ethereal figure chuckled lightly before they continued with their arms spread in exaggeration. Well, to answer your questions, it's, as I said before. You are in my domain. I am the god of this dimension, and, as for what happened, I don't have a clue. The orange soul seemed to raise an imaginary eyebrow at his words. The god. Dimension. Honestly, you completely lost me, and if you're a god, how don't you know? Didn't you bring me here? The ethereal figure just shrugged their shoulders with hands raised. I'm afraid that's beyond my ability. As I said, I'm a god of this dimension, so there is no way I could pull you in from another one. Especially from Limbo, the abode of souls that await judgment to pass. The figure then took a seated position in space, and continued, only one god has the authority to do that, and before you ask, there is no way I would know the reason, but I do know that nothing is done without a purpose. Moving a hand to their chin, the transparent figure mumbled to himself, You really are a mystery. He then asked in a questioning tone, Do you happen to remember your name? With how confusing the situation was, Naruto could only nod dumbly, and answer, Yea, it's Naruto Uzumaki. Upon hearing that name, the figure's unseen eyes seemed to widen, as he thought, Naruto. As in, the Naruto. From that dimension. Noticing the god's surprise, Naruto decided to ask out of curiosity, Why does it seem like you know me? Being broken away from their thoughts, the figure looked towards Naruto with a hidden smirk. The primordial god definitely answered my prayers if he's here. This may be the change this world needs, for better or worse has yet to be determined, and only time will tell. The figure then turned his attention to the orange soul once more. Well, yes, of course. Us gods are very familiar with the others to a certain extent, and yours is definitely among the most famous of them all. Though Naruto was plenty curious about how they were all connected amongst other things, there was another thing that had been bothering him for a bit now. You've been punctuating the word god for a while now. Are you a god or not? The figure seemed to scratch its head at the question, aware that the coming conversation may just confuse the soul of Naruto even more, but he digressed. Well, I use the term god lightly, as do all the others, because there is only one true god amongst us. The rest of us are what you may call creators. It was Naruto's turn to ask in confusion, well, what's the difference between a true god and a creator? The figure responded lazily while floating around the orb in space with relaxed ease. Creators are only responsible for the dimension they created, while the true god governs all things, to put it simply. The figure then stopped in front of the soul, and continued, in case you were wondering, the creator of your world is a man called Masashi Kishimoto. Where I came from, he was fairly famous amongst other creators, hence why I am familiar with who you are. In fact, there probably isn't a creator from my plane that doesn't know about you. Naruto had so many questions swarming around in his mind. There was just so much he wanted to know at one time, but despite his curiosity about these creators, he figured he should wrap his head around one thing at a time. So far, he was not provided with anything that concerned his current situation, which was his immediate worry for the moment. Taking his attention from the figure, he finally took the time to view his surroundings. So I know this is your domain, but what exactly is this place? The figure sent his gaze upon the world before answering. This world make it easier for you to understand. They can be considered equivalent to the shinobi of your world. Though, by no means are they weak. At this point, Naruto could sense the mood of the figure shift into one of sadness. The figure continued, this world was meant for so much more. The potential was staggering, and I poured my heart and soul into every part of its design. Unfortunately, I can't influence the world like I was once able to. This drew Naruto's attention, as he thought, he no longer has influence over this world. How can a creator not have power over the world they made? As if he could sense Naruto's thoughts, the figure said, right now, I am in a similar state to what you are in. I am a shadow of my former self, with little power to affect a dimension as large as this. Gazing at the shattered moon, he spoke with a sense of melancholy. You see, us creators come from various worlds, but a majority of us come from a place called Earth. Earth? They named their planet based on an element, thought Naruto. His planet never had a proper name, everything was just referred to as the elemental nations, as a whole. It was interesting to him that a world would name itself after an element. Their primary element must have been towards Earth release, he thought inwardly. The figure just shook his head, knowing Naruto had misunderstood him. You're forgetting that this world is completely different from yours. We didn't have powers like you, or many others did. Regardless, we weren't simple people. We more than made up for our lack of ability with our technology and adaptability. We were capable of things many others weren't close to having. He then adopted a proud stance, as he floated. We invented things to communicate from long distances, and we were capable of sending a normal man to the moon, without the use of some miracle source of energy like higher chakra. Our world was filled with innovators. I myself was the mastermind behind an animated series. Naruto appeared confused with all of the unknown terms that were being thrown around, but he could tell that it was definitely amazing from how the figure spoke with such passion and pride. The creator once more entered a somber mood after retelling some of the greatest inventions his world made, and bragging about what they have done. I won't bore you with the details, but essentially us creators had invented worlds from our imagination, without even knowing it could become a reality. How could you not know? When you create an entire dimension, I would imagine it would be hard to miss. Naruto questioned, perplexed by the logic he was presented with. One would think a person would be aware of the fact they had created a whole different plane of existence, right? You would be right, the figure started, but in our world, they were just works of fiction, fabrications meant for entertainment. It isn't until you meet certain qualifications and pass through limbo that you are given the chance to make fiction a reality. However, there is always a downside to miracles such as this. Silence reigned for a moment before Naruto spoke up, and I assume that cost was that you could no longer affect the world you created. The creator nodded their head in return. Yes, you see, I was only able to create this dimension because I was alive in my original world. Due to unforeseen medical issues, I passed away before I could complete it. I was only able to directly change the world while I was alive, but now, I am nothing more than an ethereal being with limited power. The figure then sent Naruto a look that he knew was mischievous in nature. However, with all restrictions come loopholes, and that is where you come in. Me? He questioned in bewilderment. What can I do? In case you haven't noticed, I don't even have a body. The figure chuckled lightly at Naruto's confusion, finding such a famous figure to be confused rather entertaining to watch. I can see that, but you underestimate your potential. Well, I can't change the world in some godly and direct way. I am more than capable of allowing you to exist in my world. If Naruto had a face, his eyes would no doubt be widened in shock. You mean I can have another chance at life? The figure merely nodded. Of course. It is definitely within my power to do so, but then he adopted a solemn, serious look. However, as a residual soul, you will need to occupy a body. Why is it an issue? He asked, only to receive an answer he had no desire to hear, and no doubt was shocked by. It isn't necessarily a problem for you. In order for you to exist, he paused with a short sigh, you need to occupy an already existing host, meaning, whichever body you choose to take, whatever life was there initially will disappear forever. In a horrified tone, he stuttered, what? Is it impossible for me to start as a newborn in this world? The figure merely shook his head gravely, yes, but again, you would only be taking away the future of the unborn host. You seem to forget that you are an anomaly to this world, Naruto, so there is no empty human vessel for you to take over. Is this something you still want to do, even after hearing all this? At that, Naruto shook his head without hesitation. Even if I think this is a rare opportunity, I can't do this. I won't take away someone's future just so I can have another shot at life. At those words, the figure seemed to nod his head, satisfied by the answer. You truly live up to your legacy, Naruto Uzumaki, thought the figure. I'm positive you will bring about great change to Remnant. I had a feeling you would say that that's why I found another way for you to enter my world. With renewed excitement in his voice, Naruto asked, "And how is that?" Seeing he had his attention, the figure continued, "I can reincarnate you, as a creature from this world called Grimm, who possesses form, yet no natural soul. I will not lie to you though. These creatures are regarded with hate by humanity, and they are truly a dark force, as they are now, but the people of this world don't understand that there is more than meets the eye with these creatures. They have so much potential, and they were meant for so much more, much like everyone else, but there is nothing I can do at this point." The figure then sent Naruto a pleading gaze. "If you choose to become a Grimm, you will go through a lot of hardships and changes in your life, some greater than the pain you may have experienced in your previous world. You will be forced to do things you never have even had nightmares of doing. You may not even come out as the same person you went in as. But I believe you are someone who can do good and change the world for all races on Remnant, so please, consider this with deep thought." To hear that he would be reincarnated as a monster, Naruto was obviously not too happy to hear that. He may not remember much of his previous life, but he knew it was one of hardship. It was difficult to recall everything in order now that they were fragmented, but he knew he went through a period where he was considered a monster. "Is it something I really want to live through again?" he thought in deep contemplation. As he continued to think, he asked himself, did he really turn out so bad? Yes, he might have experienced pain in the past, but did he fall into corruption? Did he truly live up to the title of demon he had placed upon him? The answer was no. He pressed on despite the neglect and pain he experienced, and became stronger than ever. In fact, he thought that with challenges and hardship, you will become stronger, faster, and wiser more quickly than any other method that could be used. He was considered a monster once, and he came out on top. What would make this time any different? After careful thought, Naruto answered, "I understand. I will become a Grimm, and I promise to try my best to change the world for the better, and I will never go back on a promise." The figure clapped their hands together in excitement, and yelled, "Great. Unfortunately, I am only able to enter you into the blank period, so..." "Blank period? What is that?" Naruto interrupted. The figure slapped his hand to his forehead, and said, "Ah, sorry about that. When I was alive on Earth, even though I created this dimension, I was only able to go into detail about some of the history. The blank period represents the part of history I have yet to create. Why can't I insert myself into the era of history you created? It has to do with the loopholes in the laws the true God had established. The history I made can't be changed through direct means. If something is to be changed, I need to do something before my history becomes established. This variable, which will be you, can alter the history from that period on. I'm not sure how far you will be from the original timeline, I just know it will be quite a bit ahead. It could span from a few years to centuries, but you don't need to worry about age. As a Grimm, you won't die with the progression of time. You can only die if you are killed directly." Naruto nodded his head in understanding, before asking, "Is there anything I need to be aware of before heading off?" The figure nodded his head, and said, "Just keep one thing in mind. This dimension I created is centered around 8 key individuals." He then pressed his finger against Naruto's soul, and a white glow formed around his orange soul. He felt a warm sensation, and immediately after, 8 different, shadowy figures with varying colors surrounding them like a cloak appeared in his mind. The first was a blurred red, moving at incredible speeds, and radiating joy and energy. The second was a cold white, frigid in countenance, and elegant in style. The third was a deep black, agile in flow, flexible in movement, and shrouded in mystery. The fourth was a burning yellow that raged, and danced wildly with both passion and fury. The fifth was a bright yellow, clumsy in appearance, but strong in heart. The sixth was an ecstatic pink, overabundant in excitement, and wild in power. The seventh was a captivating red, noble in heart, and genuine in kindness. The last was a split between green and pink, quiet and lax at times, but honorable and strong all the same. Naruto could also feel a small amount of general information regarding the world of Remnant flow into his mind. When Naruto regained himself, he took in the figure once more, and saw his form change from its former ethereal white appearance to an individual with a normal human appearance, and dark hair. The figure smiled, and said, "Do remember these figures, because they hold great significance for this dimension. How you act towards them I leave it up to you. I only ask that whatever you decide upon, you think it through carefully." Naruto said nothing, and only bowed his head in confirmation. The now human figure smiled wider, and said, "Thank you Naruto, I really hope you can change this world. It was long overdue for change. I will send you in just a moment, but first, is there anything else you'd like to ask of me?" There were many things Naruto could ask. He was very curious about the creators, the true God, the dimensions, and the questions were endless. But he figured that they weren't things he had the ability to become involved with, nor did he have a desire to. So he opted to ask a single thing. "I've been curious about this since I first met you, and I still have yet to hear the answer. Who are you? Not your title or what you were responsible for, but who are you?" The figure sent him an honest smirk with hands folded behind his back. "Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you outright. There was just too much to cover in so little time. As for who I am, my name's Montiam." He then waved his hand in front of him, and said, as Naruto began to disappear once more in a flash of white, "I have high hopes for you. With that said, Naruto was gone, and the creator, now named Monty, sat once again in silence, as he looked over the world of Remnant. I certainly didn't expect him to come here, but I guess the stories were true. He really is an unpredictable existence. I wonder what you will do, Naruto Uzumaki. Silence. In an eerie and dark forest, all that could be heard were the sounds of the night. The leaves would rustle in the wind, and the insects of the evening sang to their contents. The forest was lush with trees and wildlife, brightened only by the shattered moon, as the rays peeked through the openings between the branches. Fireflies danced to the tune of nature, and all seemed to be at peace, but there was another sound within this forest that had not existed before. If one listened closely, they could hear the soft breaths of a slumbering creature who lay in a small patch of grass among the trees. The beam of the moon shone onto the figure, allowing anyone who stumbled across it would have seen the figure as clear as day. It was a small figure, perhaps no larger than a small pup, built with a canine-like body structure. From the back of the figure rested a small bushy tail that curled around its body, almost as if in protection and preservation. Its chest rose and fell as it slumbered, adding to the factor of adorability. Perhaps, this could have once been considered an adorable creature, but it bore certain characteristics that would drive many who were aware of what it truly was, away in fear. The fur that encompassed the creature was a pitch black, reminiscent of the night without light. Covering the face of the small creature was a small, white mask with decorative red lines marring the surface. The shape was reminiscent of a fox, and though it did well in covering the skull and snout of the small creature, it did nothing to hide the unnerving fangs that seemed to protrude from its mouth as it slept. The silence continued, until the body of this fox-like creature began to stir on the grass. As it began to awaken, an eye revealed itself to be similar to that of a Grimm's, but different in one aspect. It still maintained the red-yellow, sunset hue of the eye Grimm normally possessed, but it also contained a slit pupil in the center. As to why this Grimm possessed a pupil whether others hadn't it was uncertain, but this small difference definitely held some significance or some form of importance. This places. As the small creature woke, it began to take in its surroundings, before coming to a conclusion. I see so Monty sent me here in the middle of the forest at night, as a technical newborn into this world. Seriously, what the hell? Are you trying to get me killed? The now revealed Naruto began to seriously curse his luck. So far, he has been transported to several different places, all of which have left him with more questions than answers. Breaking himself of those thoughts, he thought back to what Monty had said about him being a Grimm, rather than a human. As he looked at his current figure he couldn't help but feel like some practical joke had been played on him. He wasn't sure what it was, but he was positive that his current form, as a fox, was a cruel joke that probably had something to do with his tangled memories. I'm starting to feel irritated just looking at this form, but also strangely happy. Seriously Monty, what the hell? Through his inner musings, a ruffle of leaves amongst the bushes could be heard amongst the bushes, breaking Naruto from further contemplation. Reacting quickly, he jumped back, and assumed his best stance in preparation for combat. Unfortunately, he had only just awoken, and had yet to become accustomed to this new form of his, causing him to stumble and trip onto the ground. Shit. Why couldn't I be given a body capable of bipedal movement? While Naruto was aware that being a quadrupedal creature was advantageous in speed and maneuverability, it required time to adjust to the change. Turning his attention back to the bushes, Naruto managed to see several figures appear, all possessing a familiar black appearance to himself. These creatures were tall in height, and judging by the structure of their body, they were capable of switching between moving on all fours and on their hind legs. Their eyes were a familiar shade of sunset, with what appeared to be bones protruding from their arms, legs, and shoulders. A line of spikes could also be seen traveling partway down their spine, which only served to make them all the more intimidating. They exerted a loud howl once they entered the clearing with Naruto, as they cast him a gaze that would be difficult to discern by any human. Normally, as soon as a Grimm sets their eyes onto a human, all they could feel and sense was malice, hate, and a hunger for their flesh. But Naruto was no longer a human. He was now a Grimm, much like these creatures that now stood before him. Because of this, he did not feel any hate from them, towards himself. Instead, he was able to sense confusion. As crazy as it seemed, Naruto was actually able to understand from a simple gaze that the Grimm in front of him were confused by his presence. Was Naruto a breed of Grimm that is rarely seen? Or were these Grimm able to detect he was different from them? This creature is called I believe. Through Naruto, drawing upon the supply of information he was gifted to by Monty. When Monty showed him the forms of the 8 key figures of this world, he had also imparted Naruto with some general information about the world of Remnant as well. If he was going to be expected to live as a Grimm, it was only fair that he possessed knowledge of the different breeds, their position in the world, and various other things. I'll have to review the information I was given later. For now, I wonder what these Grimm are up to. As Naruto thought this, the wolf-like Grimm began to stalk around him, sniffing, and growing closer. Naruto did not feel the need to attack because he had yet to understand his own body, and the beolds didn't seem to show any signs of aggression yet. One of the Grimm looked Naruto in the eyes, and sent him a low growl. Even though it wasn't spoken in words, strangely enough, Naruto was able to understand that this Grimm had remarked on how he felt different, but it still understood that he was a Grimm. While most Grimm weren't intelligent, they still possessed instincts. This continued on for a few moments, before they pulled away seeing, as they weren't able to detect any form of humanity. Naruto released a breath of relief. He had just been born into this world, so he didn't want to use his first waking moments getting into a fight with his new race. He still needed time to compose himself, and reflect on any useful information he might have been given. Almost suddenly, Naruto was hit with a wave of invisible force. It wasn't something that affected him on a physical level, and caused harm, it was almost as if something had just triggered his senses. He could feel varying waves of negative emotions crawling along his skin, onto the ends of his fur. Sadness, anger, disgust, madness, the list continued, but what was strange was not how dark these thoughts were, it was the fact that Naruto didn't seem to be bothered by it. Why do I feel content? Naruto had asked himself. Naruto had yet to truly understand the physiology that came with being a Grimm, as well as their natural instinct. He was but a newborn kid, new to the world of Grimm. He couldn't understand how such darkness did not seem to affect him. In fact, he seemed to bask in its embrace, like a fire in the harsh winter. It felt almost comforting, as he bathed in its presence. This both seemed to unnerve him, and excite him. He wasn't the only one to feel this sensation, however, as he noticed that the beelves had turned their head in the same direction he felt the surge of emotions come from. Almost immediately, they let out a howl, and immediately began to charge out of the clearing, towards the direction of malice. It was a few moments after Naruto watched them leave that he began to trek after them at his own pace, using this time to get familiar with his body. Something is definitely happening over there that was able to catch their attention, and I want to be there to see what he thought, as he followed the source of darkness that was set for him. Damn, those things are pretty quick, and I think I'm finally getting used to moving, so let's try to pick up the pace. Naruto could be seen moving at a moderate pace, closing in on the feeling he had sensed earlier. As Naruto drew closer, he could hear varied sounds of explosions, clanging steel, and monstrous grunts up ahead. Upon hearing this, Naruto's speed died down to a walk, then a crawl, as it became louder. After some time, he hid himself in a bush, and peeked through the small network of branches, to come upon a sight that left him in a state of shock. Before him could be seen a disaster of epic proportions. What appeared to be a battlefield looked more like a shit show from the different happenings that were going on. There were men and women of all sorts battling amongst each other, and against the Grimm. Hunters and huntresses could be seen from every direction battling it out with sparks of dust and multiple abilities. When they weren't battling amongst each other, they were hunted by Grimm who remained in hiding, awaiting the opportunity to hunt down the humans. In one instance, blood could be seen splattered on the tattered body of one hunter, as he beheaded another, with a look of concentrated antagonism and disdain. In that moment of distraction, a Beowulf had appeared behind him, and tore through his remaining ore, gouging out a head's worth of flesh from his neck to his chest, leaving the unfortunate hunter sputtering nonsensical words of anguish and regret until his last breath. In an act of revenge, a distraught and teary-eyed huntress appeared behind the Grimm, splitting its head and ending its life in an instant. The Grimm had dropped powerlessly, beginning to disappear in a whirl of black dust, as the woman clutched the corpse of what appeared to be someone close to her. There was not a second that blood had not been spilled, as Grimm of all kinds drove their jaws and claws into the bodies of hunters, basking in the meat as they chewed through muscle and bone. The humans were no better, as they cut each other down mercilessly, and without remorse, moving on to one person when they finished another. Limbs were detached, throats were gashed, skulls were smashed, and bones were ground to small fragments. What Naruto found curious was that if the bodies were left alone long enough, it began to dissipate into a colored mist of some kind. He did not think of it much, as he continued to watch the continual scenes of horror and bloodshed. Throughout the war-torn clearing, similar scenes could be seen happening, as time passed, with each individual shouting their allegiance. From what Naruto had gathered from their chants, it seemed to have to do with fighting for individualism, while others vouched for conservatism, and desire to suppress self-expression in favor of complete unity and control. Upon hearing all this, something seemed to click in Naruto's head. The Great War, he thought to himself from out of the blue. It seemed that the information he was granted would reveal itself upon discovering them. This view of the war managed to ignite this information, allowing him to understand what exactly was happening. While Naruto appreciates this, he also couldn't help but feel that this was a bit inconvenient for him. He was hoping to search out this information in his own time, so that he could be prepared, but if the information only came to him when he witnessed it, he would have to act on the fly, with little to no plan in mind. Despite this, Naruto only considered it a minor annoyance. If there was something he had remembered about his past life, it was that he was an unpredictable existence, capable of making even the impossible become something within the realms of possibility and reality. Naruto seemed to have underestimated the range of the battles that were taking place, as a human corpse dropped in front of him, sporting a missing arm, an expression of disbelief in his eyes. The impact of the lifeless body was strong enough to splash a considerable amount of blood across his face. Instinctually, Naruto licked the parts surrounding his mouth clean of all blood. At that moment, Naruto's eyes began to glow ominously, as he eyed the corpse now with something more than observation. It was hunger. Not a hunger one felt out of necessity, but out of desire. He wanted to eat, but by no means did he need to. When was the last time you had heard of a Grimm starving to death? Grimm are semi-immortal creatures that cannot die through age, disease, or starvation. The only way they could achieve death was to be killed directly. So that begs the question, why did they consume humans? Why did they desire to destroy them, and all of their machinations? What bore this deep-seated hatred within them, and where did they come from? Unfortunately, no one truly knows this answer. Whatever it was, Naruto felt it. He felt a whirlwind of desire in his chest, growing in turbulence and chaos, as he continued to stare at the bloodied figure before him. An unknowing growl was exerted from his lips, showing how much he desired to feast on the pulp of bloodied flesh before him. But after a few moments, the gust of desire slowed to a breeze, as the darkness in his eyes began to disappear, replacing it with one of horror. I wanted to eat a human, he expressed inwardly in horrified shock. Naruto was not as much of an idiot as many made him out to be. He understood clearly the particular diet of Grimms. He was well aware that humans were the Grimm's favorite thing to snack on, but he felt that it was something he could resist. As an immortal-like creature, he didn't even need to eat. He was not aware, however, that Grimm was so primal. There was almost no reasoning behind it, he just felt the natural urge to devour. If Naruto was not conscious of his actions, he would have surely eaten the corpse in its entirety. I need to get away from here. I can't be around this, he thought. He feared that if he stayed any longer he would commit an act he wouldn't be capable of taking back. While he was no longer human, he still wasn't capable of treating humans as a source of food. Turning away from the slowly dying sounds of the battlefield, Naruto dashed out of the clearing to anywhere that wasn't there. It would be hours before Naruto finally came to a stop. Strangely, he didn't feel very winded. Then again, Grimm weren't exactly built the same way humans were. Was there even a concept of stamina for them? Right now, Naruto could be seen panting, but it wasn't out of exhaustion. He was still suffering from the after effects of his momentary lapse of hunger. I do not want to feel that way again, he thought between breaths. It was like I lost all reason, and acted without thought. This is what unnerved him the most. Don't get him wrong. He still found the act of eating humans appalling, and was less than content about being reborn into a time of war, but it was not something he wasn't already prepared for. In his world, war was commonplace, with acts of cruelty being more than just a possibility. He still didn't understand why he had an aversion to snakes, but he figured it had something to do with his past. What made Naruto different from the other Grimm was his humanity, well, internal humanity. This meant that he still thought like a human, but was simply in the body of a Grimm. I have to find an alternative. Maybe I can eat something else. The clearing he was now in was a lot larger than where he initially spawned, with a small pond in the center with various creatures in the surroundings. He could see various animals like deers, birds, squirrels, and there were even a couple of borborisks. One had a fractured tusk, while the other had both intact. He cast his gaze toward an injured deer, and found his target. Sorry dear, but this is the circle of life. With that thought, Naruto crept around the deer, somehow escaping his senses. This is strange, though Naruto, deer are particularly sensitive to things around them, so why is it acting like it doesn't even acknowledge me? Naruto shook these thoughts from his head before continuing his hunt. He wasn't one to look a gift horse in the mouth. If the deer wasn't going to make it difficult for him, he wouldn't question why. He'll just send his regards to our Almighty. And I trust, Naruto prayed lightly for his harvest. Within a second, Naruto pounced onto the deer that still hadn't reacted until Naruto dug his claws into its neck. The death came instantly, but the cries of the dying deer were enough to send the other animals scattering in fear. The only other creatures that stayed behind were the two borborisks that gave him a look that said what the actual fuck. Their confusion was rightfully understood. Grimm were not known to attack animals, so they only looked at Naruto, as if he was an idiot. Grimm was not completely mindless. There have been cases where Grimm that have lived for so long, they developed some form of intelligence through experience, which is more notably seen in mammoth-like Grimm called Goliaths. Judging by how these Grimm were able to express sentience to some extent, they must be fairly aged. Stupid hogs, they don't understand what I'm trying to do here, Naruto defended himself internally. He refused to be looked down on by a couple of pig Grimm. He was a fox. Well, a kid Grimm technically, being newly spawned, and all, but still. Foxes were higher on the food chain in his mind. Naruto turned to the carcass before him, and thought, I should probably cook this raw meat, never tastes good. Within his plethora of ninja skills he had yet to sort through, he recalled that starting a fire with twigs and sparking rocks was a viable option. It took about an hour before he managed to light a fire. What? You try lighting a fire with only paws. As Naruto continued to roast the deer over the fire, he noticed that he was still being watched by the two borborisks on the side. Naruto turned to the pig Grimm with an annoyed glare, and released a series of yips that translated into, what? You guys have a problem. Not intimidated by the yelps of a baby Grimm, the borborisks just looked away nonchalantly, as if they heard nothing, pretending they weren't observing the strange foxy Grimm just seconds ago. If Naruto still possessed a brow, it would no doubt be twitching in irritation at the actions of the boars. Those bastards probably think they're funny, whatever, I've got a deer to eat. Noticing that the deer was finally cooked, Naruto licked his lips, more out of muscle memory than actual hunger. Itadakima's Naruto began, as he chomped into the meat of the deer before he felt a strange sensation. As soon as he bit into the deer, one thought surged through his mind. Disgusting. Almost immediately, Naruto hurled the deer meat, and a black sludge-like substance, which he assumed to be his vomit. The strange thing is the taste of disgust would not disappear. He continued to heave, but that taste wouldn't go away. It was rancid beyond belief, making decayed, diseased, maggot-infested meat seem more appetizing. He could feel his body burning in rejection, aching in slight pain, and curling in resistance. The ends of his hairs stood on end, and a black mist was being emitted from his mouth. It was a long while before Naruto could finally regain himself. Fuck, I can't eat deer meat. Was that deer disease? The fuck is going on? He hollered in anger to himself. How is it that he couldn't resist the scent of raw human flesh and blood, but a well-cooked deer could be so terrible? It just didn't make any sense. He was broken from these thoughts when he heard loud snorts and what seemed to be amusement. He turned his head to the side, and immediately flared in anger. To the side, were the Borbidisks seemingly snorting at Naruto's stupidity. These boars were capable of expressing amusement. Okay, that makes them older than he thought. Regardless of their age, Naruto was pissed. Yelping in anger, he said, "You bastards. I'm gonna come over there and kick your collective fat asses." Feeling the negativity in the tones of his yelps, the two Grimm responded to the challenge with grunts of their own. Grimm were not known for killing each other, but there were disputes. Whether this be because of territory, food, humans, or antagonism between different types of Grimm, conflicts did arise. They were still animals in appearance, so their antagonism most likely stemmed from that nature. The two boars charged towards Naruto at a speed normal humans would find intimidating, but that was more like child's play to Naruto. Even if he was in an unfamiliar body, the Grimm before him did not possess the size and strength in comparison to some of the other races of Grimm out there. Even if they possessed some level of sentience, it did not mean their skill set was any different from an average Borbidisk. It just meant that they knew how to use it better. Borbidisks were straightforward in nature, and struck head-on. Their hides and skulls made it extremely difficult to penetrate, and their tusks were sharp enough to inflict a good amount of damage towards anyone who utilized ore. As they drew close to Naruto, he jumped over their heads with great agility, and leapt after them in response. The first to turn around was the boar with the fractured tusk, ready to impale Naruto with the one still intact. Predictable, he thought before latching on to said tusk with his claws. He then swung his body around it, using the momentum of the rotation to flip the Borbidisk onto his back, leaving its stomach exposed. Seeing the state of his companion, the other boar charged with a loud grunt in fury towards Naruto. Seriously, are all Grimm this simple-minded? Naruto wrapped his tail around the fractured tusk of the fallen Grimm, and lifted its exposed belly towards the charging boar. The result was an impact between fellow Grimm, as Naruto dived to the side at the last second, and charged once more to the pig Grimm. Naruto took a brief lapse of time away from the boars to review his body structure. Despite my small size, I was still able to pick up that fat boar. I guess all Grimm possess unnatural strength, but I wonder what the limits are. He decided to think about it later, as he had some pigs to take care of at the moment. The Borbidists were given no time to regain their bearings, as Naruto slammed his shielded skull against the exposed side of one hog. He then spun, using the momentum of his rotation to uppercut the other boar with his tail, sending it into the air before it came tumbling down in defeat. Naruto then adopted a stance of dominance and haughtiness before yipping. Never underestimate Naruto Uzumaki, bastards. Seeing the defeated appearance of the Borbidisks, who seemed to have acknowledged their defeat, Naruto gave a nod of his head, and turned to walk trot well, whatever you call movement with 4 legs, back into the forest. There has to be something I can eat here, but what? Naruto was truly troubled by this predicament. He needed to find some alternative to satisfy his natural instincts, but he was unsure of what he could possibly do. I'll just have to keep experimenting with different animals. There's no way that the only option is to eat humans, right? Naruto was very unsure. Well, he would like to hope so. There was nothing within the knowledge he gained from Monty that said otherwise. It was after several minutes of him being deep in thought that he heard a rustling from behind him. What do they want now? When Naruto turned, he saw the same 2 Borbidisks he had fought with earlier appear before him. He was aware that he was being followed by them, but he prayed to it was just a coincidence, and they just happened to head in his direction. Unfortunately, Naruto was never lucky when it came to situations like this. What do you hogs want? Another ass-kicking. Naruto yelped in slight annoyance. The said hogs merely looked at Naruto, and released a snort that Naruto found quite troubling, because they seemed to say something along the lines of, "Boss." Or "Nikki." Again, if Naruto had a brow, it would no doubt be twitching at the current circumstances. Seriously, I kicked their asses once, and now I'm like their gang leader. Am I collecting monsters now? This isn't fucking Pokemon. And what the fuck is Pokemon? Naruto thought angrily, also dropping a reference he himself didn't seem to understand. It seemed Monty gave him knowledge outside of just pertaining to Remnant, and this to mention not that Naruto knew any better. Seriously, why was he given knowledge that had nothing to do with his survival? Naruto shook his head of these thoughts, and simply stared at the boar like Grimm. He just looked at them. They looked back at him. He looked at them. They looked back at him. This is making me uncomfortable, he thought to himself. Realizing they were not going to leave anytime soon, Naruto let a huff of annoyance escape his mouth, as he yipped, "Fine. You guys can come along though, I should probably give you names. It's annoying if I don't have a way to identify you. Calling you guys hogs all the time can get annoying." Naruto thought for a moment before two names appeared in his mind. He didn't know why they popped up, and they sure as hell sounded stupid, but he felt like it had something to do with Monty throwing them in there. "Alright," he yipped once again, "Broken Tusk will be Gordy, and you will be Pumda, how's that?" His only response was a grunt, which he assumed was both indifference and acknowledgement at the names they were given. Naruto just shook his head, as he turned to walk away once again, with two new creatures in tow. -3 months later, tortured and tormented. He felt a weakness in his body. It felt like he was deteriorating inside, slowly being consumed by the shadows of insanity. He thirsted for blood, and starved for human meat. His eyes glazed over with primal rage and desperation, reminiscent of the average wild Grimm of this world. Through these past 3 months, Naruto had searched relentlessly and tirelessly for some sort of solution to his problem regarding humans, and his desire to consume them. Naruto had tried a number of different things. There wasn't an animal in the forest he had not tried to eat, there was no plant that looked edible that escaped his taste, and he had even tried some things that weren't edible in a last-ditch effort to preserve his humanity. But they all ended up the same way. No matter how sick he became, as a result, he tried and tried again. The Borbidisks that joined him only looked at him in confusion while he did this. By instinct, all Grimm do not have any sort of desire towards animals and life that were not human, so Naruto's actions were baffling to say the least. Of course, no worry was present in their eyes. These were still creatures of Grimm. They did not have a soul, and compassion was non-existent. Sentience and souls are a concept often confused and misconstrued. They were not the same thing, yet others always tied the two together. Most people seem to believe that you can only be sentient when you have a soul, but again, how does that explain the existence of Grimm then? Grimm have been established as the only beings that do not possess a soul, but are they not capable of thought? Are they not able to feel negative emotions? Do they not learn over the passage of time? They are capable of all these things. Grimm at times lie in wait for their prey, and strike when the victim is most vulnerable. This requires thought. Grimm are able to sense the change of negative emotions, whether it be malice, despair, or various other things, and move towards the source that requires feeling. Grimm, like the Goliaths that have lived for centuries, or perhaps even longer, have learned that by attacking hunters aggressively, they would in turn be hunted down. Instead, they choose to wait. This requires experience, and the ability to learn. So what is the answer when it is asked if Grimm possess sentience? Yes. They may not possess a soul, but they are, undoubtedly, sentient creatures. They are underestimated by the humans, and looked down on, as being nothing more than mindless beasts, monsters of nature meant only for the destruction of the human race. Naruto had stumbled upon a little secret regarding the Grimm during his time spent with the Borbidisks, as well as his experience as becoming one. The Grimm are typically docile. Yes, there are disputes at times, but he still has yet to see one Grimm kill another. In fact, when he found himself comparing Grimm and humans, he felt that Grimm were perhaps better than humans in some aspects. Naruto was a man who experienced a world-shattering war before. He may not remember much of it, but he knew enough to know the chaos and bloodshed it wrought. Memories were one thing, but feeling was something that was difficult to escape. How is it that the creatures of Grimm were capable of peace amongst their own race, yet humans continued to fight amongst themselves over trivial things? From all the fields of battle during this great war Naruto had come across since coming to this world, blood and bodies littered the grass, and scars of battle could be seen amongst the shattered trees and gouged earth. Skin was flayed, and bones were scattered before they eventually dissipated. Even if the bodies disappeared, the aftermath would remain. How many families had been left broken as a result of war? How many fathers were lost? Mothers, brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters. The list went on, and the knowledge of this truth only served to make Naruto furious at mankind. Was there no concept of peace in any of these dimensions? Will all worlds suffer from the hate and disdain of others? How much blood was needed to be shed before humanity would begin to understand the repercussions of destruction? He had yet to see a peaceful moment between them. Naruto could only feel disappointed. Between the Grimm and humans, he was slowly finding it harder to see who were more sinister in nature. This takes us back to Naruto's recent discovery about Grimm being docile under normal circumstances. He has stumbled upon it due to his own experience, and if someone heard him say that Grimm could be docile, he would no doubt be turned into an insane asylum. This docile nature of theirs only changed for certain reasons: instinct, insanity, madness. As soon as a Grimm felt any sort of darkness, sensed another human, or even one of their creations, they went mad. No, perhaps mad didn't fully describe how Grimm acted. Something was driving them to do the things they did, but what that was uncertain. Naruto just felt this unceasing desire to devour the life of mankind. The more he resisted, the stronger his instinct became. The madness grew to levels beyond what he figured was possible. It was like an incessant knocking on the door that grew louder and louder the more he waited. His irritation would continue to grow, and his resistance would begin to dwindle until he opened that door and all hell broke loose. Somehow, he knew the more he waited, the greater the repercussions would be. It was then he came to realize what Monty had meant when he first talked with Naruto about becoming a Grimm. You will be forced to do things you never even had nightmares of doing, he also said. I may not come out the same person I went in as, he mused in deep thought. I think I understand what he was talking about. There is no other option. I chose to become a Grimm. There is always a price to pay for miracles. And with a vengeance, his bout with insanity had returned once more. The cause was a strong source of malice, and death from the clearing ahead. Ah! This pain, this desire, it is unreal. I need to go there. Naruto sprinted towards the direction where he felt the battle was occurring, with the Borbodisks following in tow. It took only a few minutes before Naruto came across the bloodied clearing. Where there was blood, death always followed. This was further evidenced by the lifeless husks of hunters and huntresses he saw across the field. It seems the battle ended quicker than usual. As he looked at the bodies, his head began to throb, and his limbs began to tremble. He struggled to resist these urges. His humanity was at war with his temptation to eat. His picked Grimm companions had no such reservations toward consuming humans, and typically ate without concern for their boss. However, they could feel that today was different. They sensed that Naruto was acting stranger than usual, and noticed how he slowly began to stalk his way toward the remains of a lifeless hunter. Because of the difference they were able to sense, they opted to wait. Grimm tended to travel in groups, and with all groups, there was an alpha. While Naruto had shown to be different from other Grimm, his might and position was proven the day these boots were driven to submission. As Naruto grew closer to the corpse, his thoughts were raging with many things. Hesitation, confusion, frustration, resolution. These thoughts were all gathered together, creating a hurricane of disharmony deep within the reaches of his soul. This madness would continue to eat him alive until he could no longer prolong it. After that, he would be no better than other mindless Grimm. You will go through hardships and changes in your life, some greater than the pain you may have experienced in your previous world. Naruto recollected the words of Monty. I've felt a lot of physical and emotional pain in my life. I don't know exactly everything, but I know it hurts. But this may be one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. There were many things Naruto had cherished throughout his life. His friends, his village, but all of that came to be because of his character. It was who Naruto was, his character, his philosophy, that made him who he was, and allowed him to come to love others despite experiencing his own darkness. And now, Naruto was forced to break his character some, in order to adapt to the changes of the world. But let it be known that Naruto will always be a hard-headed ninja with a relentless will. He knew that fighting against it would do more harm than good, but that didn't mean he couldn't control it. It was a long internal struggle that seemed to last for hours, but after some time he made up his mind. It hurts knowing I will be eating a race one used to be, but I won't let this control me. I will only consume the dead, or those that deserve retribution. I refuse to become a monster that destroys everything in its path. I will have control over my actions, and not let my body control me. After finally reaching the corpse, he slowly brought his face to the exposed torso of the hunter. I will learn the truth about Grimm. I will discover our strength, our potential, and our reason for existence. The glint of determination could be seen in his slit pupils, as he opened his mouth, revealing his fangs to the exposed flesh before him. I will survive, and change this fucked up world, if my name isn't Naruto Uzumaki. And if there's one thing I keep. But the final growl, as he bit into the bloody skin, tearing out the meat and muscle, and marrying the bone inside, Naruto began to feel a wave of slight relief, as he continued to ingest the ground mess of bones and flesh. It's a promise. With newborn acceptance of who he was, Naruto continued to bask in the remains of the deceased, slowly erasing the madness that had once consumed him. His determination and will were not the only things that grew that day. As he continued to satiate his appetite, his body grew to that of a normal young fox with bone plating along the upper part of his fore and hind legs. His mask became a bit more intricate in design and intimidating in structure. And dancing behind him in wild, excited fervor was a sight that would no doubt shock him if he had any memory of his former tenant and what had made him famous. Another tale. Grimm, the wonder of the world or nightmare. For, as long as humanity has existed, the Grimm have been around. Yet after so many years, little is known about Grimm other than the fundamentals to survive. For time, man and Faunus kind studied their weaknesses and behaviors, discovered their varieties, and calculated the threat levels of Grimm. Strides have been made in Grimm countermeasures. Development in dust and weaponry only seem to evolve with every generation of hunters and huntresses. There has been research in the past, and there will surely be more in the future, but humanity still struggles to crack the truth on the origins of Grimm kind. It became universally accepted by the world of Remnant that they were forces of nature, acting against humanity. Then that begs the question, why does nature deem humanity to be a threat? Philosophers believe that nature deemed humanity was polluting the world with war, destruction, and chaos. Humanity was seen as a disease, that humanity was a virus that can only harm the natural splendor of the world and nature. That all this was a desperate act by Mother Nature to preserve the remnants of a slowly dying world. Out of fear and more pressing concerns, this seemed to be the widespread belief amongst all remnants inhabitants. But doesn't that seem so superficial? Take humans for example. They seem to be simple creatures on the surface, but their bodies hold many mysteries and are far more complex than meets the eye. They can feel emotions. They can make decisions. They can use a power that can bend even the laws of physics. Their bodies are functioned by organs, nerves, and muscles that act as the cogs to a complex fleshy machine known as the body. There is so much more to humanity than they realize, to the extent that humans don't even fully understand themselves. So, who is humanity to decide what Grimm are, what they're like, and where they came from? Because Grimm were deemed unintelligent, humanity took it upon themselves to decide the truth of their existence, and labeled them whatever they wanted. Naruto, however, didn't see things in the same light. If you were never a Grimm, how can you claim to know them? He thought. Naruto is special, in the way that he can now fully decipher what Grimm truly was because he lives amongst them. He can relate to them because his biology is the same. He retains the same urges all Grimm have, and has a connection to the mindset of Grimm. He found that Grimm can, in fact, communicate with each other. This was discovered shortly after he ate his first human, and finally put his focus onto things outside of his survival, and resisting his natural urges. There wasn't really a language they shared. Rather, there just seemed to be some sort of instinctual link that made it easy for them to understand each other, something akin to telepathy that allowed each other a basic understanding of their feelings towards something. And when their mind wasn't clouded over due to surrounding negative emotions and instincts, they could communicate normally, though it was usually at a toddler-like level. It was through this discovery Naruto finally found a purpose for himself in life. Now mentioned that there was more to Grimm than meets the eye, he mused before looking at his companions that have been by his side for the past year. Purriah and Gordy could be seen testing each other's strength in the distance by butting heads in the clearing, while Naruto was lazily resting in a tree above them. Naruto always found it entertaining to watch them fight with each other. For one, it made the dull days that went by more lively, or another, it kept them from bothering him so often. And I want to find out what that is. If I can learn more about them, he paused, as he lifted his tails in front of him to take in their bushy appearance, then I can learn more about myself. The biggest reason for Naruto's new purpose in understanding Grimm was because he himself seemed to have evolved in a way that was difficult to ignore. After consuming his first human, he felt stronger, faster, slightly larger, and had gained an additional tail. From the general knowledge he received from Aum, he never knew there was such a phenomenon outside of transforming into an alpha Grimm. But Naruto had a feeling his transformation wasn't the same. He was much too small to be considered an alpha. And though he is very capable when in confrontation due to his unnatural speed and finesse in combat, that was mainly due to him possessing a far greater intelligence and experience for fighting, not because of the evolution itself. Over the past year, he continued to feast on the corpses of hunters and huntresses who had fallen due to the war, but there were only slight changes since his evolution. He would only gain minor improvements in dexterity, strength, and control of his body. After he crossed the line by eating a human, it became easier to do as time progressed. He was still resistant the next few times, but he came to understand that this is his life now, and he can't do anything to change this for now. He understood that he would rather control his diet than become a mindless beast who devours every little thing in its path. This is the reason he only feeds on those who are already dead. Slump slam. Broken from his thoughts, Naruto began to feel the tree he was resting on begin to shake a bit. Not so much to make him full, but enough to catch his attention at the very least. He looked down at the source with narrowed eyes, and saw Purriah and Gordy giving him a look that said, "Let's play." Naruto yipped in annoyance. "This is our first break in weeks. Let me relax a little." He then waved his front paw in a shooing motion. "If you want to play, do what you were doing before." Naruto wasn't sure why he stuck around with these hugs for so long. Although they do provide some entertainment, they also come with an equal amount of annoyance. It kind of cancels the good out with the bad. Snort snort. "What does it look like?" "I'm trying to nap." Snort. "I know I don't need to sleep. It just feels nice to close my eyes." Snort. 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 "Where did you learn to say that?" Snort. "Alright me." This battle between yips and snorts continued for some time, until Naruto finally caved in to their vigor. It was always this way since they first met. The boars loved to fight each other, but enjoyed it even more with Naruto. He fought by moving around, and intelligently using his body in acrobatic ways that required skill and finesse that Grimm were generally incapable of. In short, Naruto was a challenge they wanted to overcome. To the Borbidisks, it was considered playtime, but for Naruto, it was training. It took some time getting used to his body, especially after he gained a larger one and an additional tail, but the boars helped him refine his movements. This was another one of those reasons why he appreciated having them around. They certainly knew how to provide a decent warm-up. Naruto leaped down from the tree and landed behind the boar and yipped, "Fine, go ahead, show me what you got." With his confirmation, both boars released a grunt in response, of what seemed to be excitement. Strange now that I think about it, these guys are definitely different since we first met, he thought. The way they express themselves has become much clearer than before, and I can understand their snorts a little better now, as well. I wonder what changed. Naruto wasn't given much time to contemplate however, as Gordy was the first to tackle him. He's attacking the same exact way we first met, thought Naruto with hints of disappointment welling within, but I guess that's to be expected I suppose. As Naruto had said, Gordy was attacking him the same exact way he did during their first encounter. He couldn't really blame them for this, though. Grimm were generally simple creatures to begin with, and the Borbidisks were even more so. Their bodies were designed for charging and frontal assaults, so there was a limit to what they could actually do. Already having experienced this same attack pattern before, Naruto reached out his claws for his tusk, and proceeded to spin him like he had done once before. He hoped they would learn their lesson this time, but he didn't have high expectations. After a couple of spins, Naruto tossed Gordy to the side, slamming him into a nearby tree. At least that is what he thought would happen. Whilst in the air, Gordy seemed to shift his weight forward, making him spin in a rapid manner that broke the momentum of the throw. He continued to spin when he touched down onto the ground, and proceeded to wheel around for another, more powerful, charge. Meanwhile, Naruto stood still in surprise, as he contemplated what had just happened. Did he just use me? From Naruto's perspective, Gordy baited Naruto into doing the same move he had done before by acting stupid. He used Naruto's move to give him a faster rotation for his rollout charge that Borbidisks are known for. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the boar that was closing in on him with gaining speed. Either he has incredible instinct or his intellect is increasing. How can that be possible for Grimm within a year? Naruto's perspective of Grimm continued to grow more and more mysterious. It seemed like with every discovery came infinite questions. Despite this curveball technique that Gordy pulled off, it only managed to surprise Naruto, not catch him off guard. He was well versed in combat, and has gotten into some territorial disputes with several Grimm throughout the year, so the difference between him and the boars was still significant. When Gordy was only a few inches away, he jumped above him onto another tree, and observed what he was planning to do next. Wheeling around once more, Gordy charged again to the tree Naruto was in. During his charge, Pumba had come along at some point, and adopted a low stance in front of the tree, with his tusks low, and facing the charging Gordy. Naruto tilted his head in confusion. What are they? Naruto then paused before he reached a conclusion that widened his eyes once more in shock. Seriously? This was Naruto's thought, as he saw Gordy charge onto Pumba's tusks, where the hog was then launched towards the foxy Grimm like a catapult. Naruto swiftly leapt back to the ground, as Gordy tore through the tree he was on previously like it was paper. This isn't instinct, Naruto concluded. They are learning at a much faster rate than the average Grimm should. Perhaps the previous move could have been played off as survival instinct and natural reaction, but the fact that the two Grimm worked together to create a catapult, that was strategy. Naruto grinned mischievously as he watched the boars begin their next assault. Things are starting to get interesting. Despite their growing intelligence, it still wasn't at a level that would make Naruto take them seriously. He easily put them in their place again. The crew of one fox and two Borbidisks could now be seen traveling through the forest. Snort snort. Yeah, I'm actually still a bit surprised. You guys impress me. Snorted pride. You cocky hogs. What are you so proud of? I still kicked your asses. Naruto yelped in a laugh. He couldn't let them get swollen heads and become cocky, because that could cost them in the future. Snort. Naruto rolled his eyes. Mean. I'm surprised you guys still know what that word means. I just taught you last week. As Naruto just said, he had been training Pumba and Gordy to understand what certain words mean and how to speak in a way like himself. While Naruto wouldn't admit it, he did start to feel a bit lonely. He wanted to have someone he could talk to that didn't require sounds. Come back and complain when you guys can communicate something other than snorts through or link. This sort of banter continued as they tread on until a familiar wave of negativity passed through them. At the feeling, the Borbidisks immediately adopted an aggressive countenance, but did little to move from their position. Throughout the time that they spent with Naruto, they clearly understood who was the alpha of the group. While Naruto was still smaller than them in size, he proved time and time again that he was superior in every way. They refused to move without the okay from their boss. It's close, thought Naruto, as he picked up on the location of the negative sensation. Naruto's slit eyes narrowed, as he looked in the direction of this negative feeling. His control over his urges back then is nothing in comparison to what it is now. With Naruto's regulated diet, it's rare to see him in an unreasonable state of starvation and lose himself to his instincts. From the direction of negativity, he could hear cries of agony and pleas for help in the distance, as a hulking roar silenced them with monstrous steps that shook the ground even Naruto was standing on. To feel the earthquake from its steps, even at this distance, Naruto couldn't help but be shocked. Whatever that Grimm is, it's big. Perhaps in another world, Naruto may have played the role as a hero and saved those desperate hunters and huntresses from death. But Naruto understood now that the world isn't such a kind place. The humans hunted Grimm, and the Grimm destroyed the humans. Even if he himself never went to hunt humans himself, it didn't mean he would stop other Grimm from doing so. And he was sure that humans would kill him without any regrets. This was just the way the world worked. He was only a single fox Grimm. Something like this was outside of his power and control to handle. He shook his head. Besides, those guys were asking for it. Being a Grimm with intellect, Naruto could do something no other Grimm could. Normal Grimm were only capable of sensing if there was a lot of negativity, or a little. But because he had emotions of his own, he could differentiate the feelings of negativity from one another. He could sense the intentions of those feelings, whether it be lust, murder, anger, depression, and more. From what he felt, those hunters-huntresses were very intent on hunting the monstrous Grimm in the distance, but it seemed they overestimated their own capabilities. If you are prepared to hunt, prepare to be hunted yourselves. It was a dog-eat-dog world in Remnant, something Naruto understood very clearly. Then again, what world isn't like this nowadays? Naruto remained steady for what seemed like a half an hour, before the screams and stomping in the distance became mute. It was then he gave a nod to the hogs. Let's check it out, guys. Snort, snort. It took only a few moments before they arrived at a small clearance in the area. At least, it would have been considered a small clearing if it weren't for the decimated bodies that littered the ground around them, as well as the toppled trees and minced bushes. Limbs and bodies could be seen bent and broken at sickening angles. The surrounding trees were bulldozed over, dressed with thrashed bodies and drenched blood. There was not a body that could be seen which hadn't been ground or crushed. It was a brutal sight. This was a Grimm attack for sure, but what kind of Grimm is this capable? Thought Naruto, as he took in his surroundings, before spotting the appearance of a very large figure. Its size was towering, as it held the mangled body of what appeared to be a hunter's corpse, with a dark trunk. It seemed to be taking its time, as it chewed the head of the hunter. Its skull was protected with bone plating, reminiscent of his own, and two large tusks protruding outwardly in a threatening manner. Its back was covered in spines like a porcupine, and had some bone plating covering its legs. Goliath, concluded Naruto, as he continued to watch the hulking Grimm casually indulge himself with the corpses of his prey. Naruto couldn't help but notice that this Grimm was 2 times bigger than the average Goliath, and had a unique red tint dyed to the ends of its tusks. Its trunk also seemed to have rings of bone plating, something other Goliaths did not have. It also had scars that littered its body and mask, which attested to how old this Grimm truly was, and its dominating presence seemed to make Gordy and Pumba shake more than a bit. This is the presence of an alpha, Naruto thought, as he took in this imposing figure of a Grimm. Noticing that it wasn't alone, the Goliath took a glance towards the new arrival of Grimm. It sent a bored gaze towards the Borbidisks that shivered under its presence, but paused once it caught sight of a young kid that seemed perfectly fine to be standing before a Grimm that absolutely towered over its figure. Naruto became wary, as the Goliath proceeded to tread towards him slowly, with undeterred focus and a daunting gaze. Once the Goliath was close, it dropped the corpse that was held in his trunk and began to sniff him. What is it trying to do? Naruto mused. He was a bit uncomfortable seeing how much attention this giant Grimm was giving him. Nevertheless, he did nothing to impede his actions. Naruto could not feel any ill intent coming from it, only a powerful sense of curiosity. Strange, Naruto reflected. Those beelds I first met did something similar when we first met. Am I rare Grimm? This wasn't the first time he had gained this sort of attention, but the most he received was a passing gaze after his first encounter. After a few moments, the Goliath's trunk pulled away, while keeping Naruto in his sight. Be strange, it communicated through the link. Naruto was taken aback when he heard the Grimm speak through the link. You can speak. After spending so much time with the boars, he was starting to think that only he could speak clearly through the link between Grimm. It was a pleasant surprise to him, since his only interaction had been with snorts. Even though it spoke pretty slowly, and in broken sentences, this was still a nice change of pace. The Goliath slowly nodded his head, and responded, all old and Grimm speak with time. It then cast a curious question of its own. You speak like wise Grimm, but feel young, why so? I can't say, said Naruto, fabricating his response. I was born about a year ago, and I've been aware since I first formed. Naruto didn't really know how to answer this question without saying something unbelievable. So, he decided to play for ignorance, since it saved time explaining. Though the Goliath could speak, it still wasn't at the level of intelligence that was capable of detecting lies. Not that it would care either way. The Grimm seemed to accept the answer with another nod. I see world is mysterious. Naruto then asked, why did you approach me? You didn't know I was able to speak before. It was obvious this wasn't the reason he was approached. Naruto only spoke after this mammoth Grimm finished whatever investigation it had performed. Naruto noticed that Grimm was silent for a moment, seemingly having trouble explaining his reasoning. It was a few more moments later before it continued. Don't know you are Grimm yet feel different. This seemed to catch him by surprise, leading him to ask, different how? Naruto was curious. He himself knew why he was different, considering he was an ex-human shoved into the shell of a Grimm. His advanced intelligence, in comparison to other Grimm, was at a whole other level. You are Grimm yet feel human. Human? Though Naruto was in shock. Now that he thought about it, how did he not notice it before? Even if Grimm can develop intelligence, they shouldn't be able to gain emotions well, according to superficial knowledge. Are they able to detect my change in emotion? Unable to hide his curiosity, Naruto asked, so you approached me because I feel human? To his surprise, the Goliath shook his head at this. No, you are strange, but something else more strange. Naruto's curiosity was struck once more, as he thought, more strange. What could be more strange than a Grimm that feels like a human? That should be considered total absurdity according to today's common sense. Finding it fruitless to ponder on his own, he decided to voice his question, what could be more strange? The Grimm seemed to give him another look over before answering, I don't feel like killing you. The moment those words were spoken, Naruto froze at the Grimm's casual admittance to murder. The Goliath continued, we Grimm hate humans, yet I don't hate you, that is strange. Naruto couldn't agree more with this statement. If it truly was, as the Goliath said, shouldn't all other Grimm hate him as much as they hate other humans? If he really did give off the vibe of a human being despite appearing as a Grimm, then why hasn't he been hunted by his kind? And yet according to the Goliath, Naruto seemed to be the exception to this. You feel like an alpha. Your feeling makes me want to follow, spoke the aged Grimm, as he bent at the knee in deference to Naruto. A loud boom resounded, as the Goliath bowed to the ground, causing Naruto, Pumbit, and Gordy to lose their footing a bit in surprise. While Naruto and the group regained their footing, the Goliath continued, I want to learn more about you, so allow this one to follow. I'm nowhere near as old as you, Naruto began with a shake of his head. You are larger and stronger than I am. Why would you follow a small Grimm like me? The mammoth was silent for a short time, as it stared in Naruto's eyes, noticing how he had slit pupils, something other Grimm didn't possess. For the same reason the boars follow. The Goliath then stood once more, as it approached the boars, before sidling up to them in a line formation. Grimm Alpha isn't the strongest, it's the smartest who's smarter. Hearing this, Naruto felt like he finally understood one of the mysteries of being an Alpha Grimm. It didn't matter how strong one was, and Naruto was proof of this. If one possessed enough intelligence or skill, they could conquer even the greatest of heights. The Alphas in Grimm history were more known for their greater strength in comparison to average Grimm, but it seemed their ability to rally other Grimm to their side was overlooked often. We feel you can bring us change and hope. Hope, Naruto thought inwardly, as he let that one word mull around his head once or twice. He never expected words like hope from a Grimm. For a long time, they have been perceived as evil creatures, or the embodiment of chaos. For a race of beings who were treated as bringers of destruction to use words like hope, it was truly a novel experience for him. Naruto dared to say that he felt happy. Naruto wanted to do more than understand his race now. He wanted to meet their expectations, and clear up the general misconception of his kind. There was a reason why they are the way they are. He just needed to find this reason, and correct it. But, who knows how long this may take. It could be years, decades, centuries, but, as a Grimm, he felt he had all the time in the world. He turned his gaze to the direction of the Borbodisks, and asked, do you guys feel the same way? Snort, snort. To Naruto's surprise, there was no hesitation in the snorts of his companions. He had never bothered to ask for their reasoning to follow them, and only thought it was because he was stronger. The Hogs were confident in their answer, as they performed the same action the Goliath did, by bowing to him in submission, and what also seemed to be genuine respect. Naruto smiled a foxy grin, I see, then I guess I shouldn't disappoint. He then turned in the direction of the Goliath for a moment before asking, do you have a name of some sort? The Goliath merely shook his head, we Grimm usually don't need names. Naruto thought about this for a moment, deciding to give his new companion a name. Naruto was different from normal Grimm, and needed a name to differentiate them to avoid confusion. He also felt that names gave them a sense of identity, making it easier to give out commands. As he thought about names, a small tingle could be felt in the back of his head, as a name seemed to pop out of him from the pool of knowledge he was granted. I think Ganesha would be a good name. Ganesha, it said, repeating the name a few times to have a good feel for the word. Ganesha, it feels wise and powerful. I like it. Naruto smiled at his approval, and nodded, that's great. My name's Naruto, by the way. And these guys are Pumbit and Gordy. Snort, snort, I see I will be in your care. Nodding at the short exchange of introductions, Naruto turned away towards the forest, and said, well, let's head out before more hunters and huntresses come along. As you say, my Alpha, Ganesha confirmed, before the small herd of Grimm disappeared into the folds of darkness, and within the forest. Thanks for watching my video, leave a like if you enjoyed my video, and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. And make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description. See you next time, till then sayonara.